tonight, as the world gradually settles into its quieter hours, there is something quietly remarkable to consider. Every memory you have ever carried, whether it shines with extraordinary clarity or rests somewhere beyond easy reach, began as nothing more than a brief pattern of activity among countless living cells. A conversation that lasted only a few moments, the scent of rain drifting through an open window, the feeling of warm sunlight across your hands, each arrived softly, lingered for a while, and then became part of the hidden landscape within your mind. Unlike a library, where every volume waits patiently upon its shelf, memory is always gently changing. Even as you rest, even as your breathing becomes slower and more regular, the networks that support memory continue their quiet work. Some connections strengthen almost imperceptibly. Others become lighter, allowing space for new experiences that tomorrow may bring. It is a peaceful process, one that asks for no attention from us. The brain carries on with remarkable patience as forests continue growing while no one watches. Far beneath the surface of awareness, billions of neurons communicate through tiny electrical signals and delicate chemical exchanges. None of these conversations produces sound. There is no audience gathered to witness them. Yet together, they create everything we recognize as remembering. The familiar face of an old friend, the melody of a favorite song, the path home walked hundreds of times until it becomes almost effortless. It can be comforting to realize that memory is not stored inside one single place. For many years, people imagined there might be a hidden chamber somewhere within the brain where experiences were neatly preserved, waiting untouched until needed again. Modern neuroscience has revealed something far more gentle. Memories are distributed across many regions, woven together like countless threads in an ancient tapestry. Vision contributes its colors. Hearing contributes its sounds. Emotion quietly lends its warmth or its sorrow. Together, they create something richer than any single part could provide. Imagine standing beside a calm lake before sunrise. The surface reflects pale stars that have not yet disappeared into morning light. Around the shoreline, mist drifts almost without movement. Trees stand quietly in the cool air, each reflected beneath itself in the still water. If a single stone were placed into the lake, ripples would spread outward in every direction, touching reflections that seemed completely separate only moments before. Something similar happens within memory. One small reminder can awaken an entire landscape of connected experiences. The smell of pine may gently invite memories of distant mountains. A familiar voice may bring back an old room filled with afternoon sunlight. One taste may quietly uncover an entire season that had rested unnoticed for many years. Scientists often describe this as associative memory. Rather than storing isolated fragments, the brain builds relationships between experiences. One memory supports another. Paths cross and reconnect. The network grows gradually throughout life, becoming more intricate with every passing year. No single memory exists entirely alone. There is something deeply reassuring in this design. It suggests that our experiences are not scattered randomly, but gently woven together, each helping to support the next. Even memories we rarely think about may still quietly influence the way we understand the world. Meanwhile, another remarkable feature begins to reveal itself. Forgetting, which so often feels like a flaw, may actually be one of memory's greatest strengths. It is natural to imagine that a perfect memory would be an extraordinary gift. To remember every face, every conversation, every morning, every passing cloud. Yet people who possess unusually detailed autobiographical memories often describe an experience that is surprisingly exhausting. The past remains constantly vivid. Old emotions return with striking clarity. Small moments refuse to fade into the quiet background where most memories eventually settle. For most people, forgetting creates space. It allows the mind to emphasize what matters while gently releasing countless details that would otherwise crowd every moment of awareness. Each day contains millions of pieces of information. Exact pattern of every leaf seen through a window. The precise arrangement of distant footsteps on a busy street. The countless expressions passing across unfamiliar faces. If nothing were ever forgotten, each new experience would compete with an overwhelming archive of tiny observations. Instead, the brain practices quiet selection. Not every experience becomes a lasting memory. Many remain only briefly before dissolving, much like footprints disappearing beneath gentle waves upon a shoreline. This is not failure, it is balance. Elsewhere within the brain, another small structure continues its patient work. Nestled deep beneath the outer layers lies the hippocampus, a region named because early anatomists thought it resembled a tiny seahorse. Though relatively small, it plays a remarkable role in helping new experiences become lasting memories. The hippocampus does not permanently store every memory itself. Instead, current evidence suggests that it helps coordinate the early stages of memory formation, gradually allowing experiences to become integrated across broader areas of the cerebral cortex over time. Some researchers describe this process as similar to carefully introducing new books into an enormous library. At first, each new arrival must be cataloged, connected, and placed within the larger collection. Only gradually does it become part of the library's enduring organization. This work continues quietly throughout our lives. Each familiar morning, each peaceful evening, each conversation shared beneath changing skies. The hippocampus rarely rests entirely. Imagine an old observatory standing upon a quiet hill. Night after night, patient astronomers once watched stars move almost imperceptibly across the heavens. No single observation revealed everything. Yet over years, patterns slowly emerged. Small measurements accumulated into understanding. Memory follows a similar rhythm. Individual experiences often seem ordinary while they happen. Only later do they become part of larger stories that define entire chapters of life. A simple walk becomes the memory of a childhood neighborhood. A single dinner becomes part of a lasting friendship. A quiet evening becomes the beginning of a family tradition, remembered decades later. Meaning often grows more slowly than experience itself. Long before modern neuroscience possessed microscopes capable of observing individual synapses, philosophers wondered where memories might live. Some imagined invisible impressions upon the soul. Others pictured tiny physical traces left behind inside the brain, as though experience pressed gentle marks into soft wax. These early ideas were limited by the knowledge of their time, yet they reflected an enduring curiosity that continues today. Human beings have always wondered why some moments remain vivid while others quietly disappear. Even now, despite extraordinary advances in neuroscience, many questions remain beautifully open. Scientists understand much about the mechanisms supporting memory formation, but consciousness itself continues to invite careful investigation. How electrical activity becomes subjective experience remains one of the most fascinating questions in science. Researchers continue to investigate with remarkable patience, building understanding one careful observation at a time. There is no hurry. Knowledge, like memory, often grows slowly. Across quiet laboratories around the world, delicate instruments record tiny electrical patterns from living neurons. Invisible signals travel through intricate networks with astonishing precision. The activity is measured in thousandths of a second, yet its consequences may endure for decades. Some neurons become more likely to communicate after repeated activity together, a phenomenon often summarized by the phrase, "cells that fire together, wire together." Although this saying simplifies a complex biological process, it captures an important principle. Repeated experiences can gradually strengthen certain neural pathways, making related memories easier to access later. Practice changes the brain. Repetition leaves gentle traces. This process, known as synaptic plasticity, allows learning throughout life. The remarkable thing is not that the brain changes. The remarkable thing is that it never entirely stops changing. Even in adulthood, even during later years, the nervous system continues adapting in response to experience. Some changes become slower with age, yet the capacity for learning remains surprisingly resilient. Imagine an ancient forest. At first glance, the great trees appear permanent. Their trunks seem unchanged through generations. Yet beneath the soil, roots continue growing almost invisibly. Tiny fungi exchange nutrients between neighboring trees. New branches extend towards small openings in the canopy where sunlight quietly reaches the forest floor. Change continues, even when everything appears still. The brain often behaves in much the same way. Its greatest transformations are frequently hidden from ordinary awareness. A language learned gradually, a skill practiced patiently, a familiar face recognized more easily than before. Countless subtle adjustments accumulate until something once unfamiliar begins to feel entirely natural. Meanwhile, sleep itself becomes one of memory's most faithful companions. When evening arrives and the outside world grows quieter, the brain does not simply switch itself off. Instead, different patterns of activity emerge, each contributing in subtle ways to the maintenance and organization of memory. During certain stages of sleep, patterns first experienced while awake appear to be replayed within the hippocampus and related brain regions. Current evidence suggests these quiet reactivations may help strengthen newly formed memories, gradually integrating them with existing knowledge. It is almost as though the brain spends part of the night softly reviewing the day, not with conscious effort, but with extraordinary biological patience. The conversations continue, the pathways adjust, the library quietly organizes itself. Outside, the moon may drift silently across the night sky, while entire forests sleep beneath silver light. Snow may fall across distant mountains. Waves may continue their endless conversation with empty shores. Deep beneath the ocean, creatures that never witness sunlight move slowly through darkness that has remained unchanged for millions of years. The world continues its quiet rhythms. Within us, another rhythm unfolds just as gently. Memory grows, memory changes, memory rests. And without asking for our attention, it patiently prepares us to awaken into another day, carrying forward only what needs to remain, while allowing countless smaller details to dissolve softly into the peaceful background from which every new experience will one day emerge. There is another quiet quality of memory that often goes unnoticed simply because it feels so natural. Every remembered moment is, in some gentle way, a reconstruction. When we recall an afternoon from many years ago, we do not open a perfectly preserved recording hidden somewhere inside the mind. Instead, the brain patiently gathers many small pieces that have been stored across different regions, fitting them together with remarkable care until an experience begins to feel present once more. This may sound surprising at first, but it is one of the reasons memory feels alive rather than mechanical. Each recollection is an act of quiet creation, guided by patterns that have been strengthened over years of living. The colors of a familiar room, the sound of distant birds beyond an open window, the expression on someone's face, the feeling of standing beneath a broad evening sky, these separate threads are woven together again, often so smoothly that we never notice the careful work taking place beneath awareness. Scientists have spent decades exploring how this reconstruction unfolds. Functional brain imaging has shown that remembering often activates many of the same sensory regions that were involved when the original experience first occurred. To remember a familiar melody is not merely to think about music in an abstract sense. Portions of the brain involved in hearing become active once again. To remember a landscape may gently awaken regions associated with vision. In a quiet way, memory allows the past to borrow some of the machinery of the present. Imagine an old lighthouse standing beside a calm northern sea. During daylight, its lantern rests quietly while while waves move endlessly below. At night, however, the light slowly turns, casting its steady beam across dark water. Each rotation illuminates a different stretch of ocean before moving onward again. No single beam reveals the entire horizon at once, yet over time, every direction receives its moment of gentle light. Memory often works with similar patience. Awareness settles briefly upon one detail, then another, gradually allowing a larger picture to emerge. A single remembered scent leads to familiar doorway. The doorway recalls quiet footsteps along a wooden floor. Those footsteps invite the memory of laughter echoing from another room. Piece by piece, the past becomes visible again, not all at once, but in calm succession. This gradual quality is part of what makes remembering feel so deeply human. It reflects the brain's preference for relationships rather than isolated fragments. Experiences become meaningful because they are connected, each one gently leaning upon countless others that came before. Far beneath this familiar process lies another remarkable ability known as pattern completion. When only a portion of an experience is encountered, the brain can often fill in many of the remaining details with extraordinary efficiency. Seeing the corner of a favorite photograph may immediately call to mind the entire image. Hearing the opening notes of a melody may quietly summon every verse that follows. The hippocampus appears to play an important role in this ability. Current evidence suggests that partial information can sometimes trigger the retrieval of broader memory networks, allowing incomplete cues to awaken surprisingly complete recollections. This happens so effortlessly that we rarely pause to appreciate it. A cool breeze carries the scent of salt. Instantly, perhaps without intention, an entire coastline returns. The sound of waves, the brightness of afternoon sunlight, the distant cry of seabirds, warm sand beneath bare feet, a horizon stretching beyond sight. Only one small sensation arrived through the senses, yet a much larger world quietly followed. It is a beautiful reminder that memory does not simply collect experiences. It patiently preserves relationships between them, allowing even the smallest detail to become a doorway. Meanwhile, another gentle mystery unfolds every night inside sleeping minds. Dreams have fascinated people throughout recorded history. Long before anyone understood neurons or neurotransmitters, dreams inspired stories, philosophies, and quiet contemplation beneath countless night skies. Ancient civilizations often regarded dreams as messages from distant realms, while later scholars sought natural explanations rooted in the workings of the human mind. Modern neuroscience has revealed many important details, yet dreams continue to retain an atmosphere of quiet mystery. During rapid eye movement sleep, often called REM sleep, the brain becomes surprisingly active. Certain regions associated with visual imagery and emotion show heightened activity, while areas involved in careful logical evaluation may become somewhat less active. This combination helps explain why dreams can feel vivid emotionally meaningful, and unconstrained by the ordinary rules of waking experience. A familiar street may gently transform into a moonlit forest. A childhood home may overlook an endless ocean. Someone known long ago may appear exactly as they once were, untouched by time. While dreaming, these transitions often feel entirely natural. The sleeping brain accepts them with remarkable calm. Scientists continue to investigate why dreams occur. One possibility is that dreaming reflects the brain's ongoing process of organizing memories, emotions, and learning. Another possibility is that dreams arise from spontaneous patterns of neural activity that the mind naturally shapes into coherent experiences. Current evidence suggests that several processes may contribute together rather than a single explanation accounting for every dream. What remains clear is that dreams are closely connected to memory. Fragments of recent experiences often mingle with much older memories. Faces combine, places merge. Familiar objects appear in unexpected settings. It is as though the sleeping mind quietly wanders through an immense archive, selecting pieces from different shelves and arranging them into entirely new landscapes. Imagine an immense museum standing empty after visitors have gone home. Moonlight filters softly through tall windows. Dust drifts almost invisibly through still air. Long galleries stretch into quiet darkness, each containing countless artifacts gathered across generations. No footsteps echo now. No voices disturb the silence. Only gentle light moves slowly across polished floors. Perhaps dreaming resembles wandering through such a place, not searching for anything in particular, but allowing old and new experiences to rest beside one another, quietly discovering unexpected connections. Whether or not this image perfectly reflects the underlying biology, it captures something peaceful about the relationship between sleep and memory. The brain does not seem hurried. It explores with extraordinary patience. Elsewhere inside the sleeping brain, another important process continues almost unnoticed. Not every memory should remain equally strong forever. Some pathways become reinforced through repetition, while others gradually weaken if they are no longer needed. This selective adjustment helps maintain flexibility throughout life. Neuroscientists sometimes compare memory to tending a living garden rather than storing objects inside a warehouse. A garden is never truly finished. Some plants flourish with regular care. Others quietly fade. New growth appears each season. Old branches make room for younger ones. Nothing remains completely unchanged, yet the overall landscape retains its identity through continuous, gentle renewal. The brain shares this living quality. Its connections respond to experience. Its networks adapt. Its memories breathe with time. There can be comfort in recognizing this. We sometimes worry when details become difficult to recall, imagining that memory should remain perfectly fixed. Yet nature rarely chooses permanence over adaptation. Rivers slowly alter their courses. Mountains weather beneath wind and rain. Forests change one quiet season after another. The nervous system belongs to this same living world. Its strength lies not in remaining unchanged, but in continuing to adapt. Long before sunrise reaches the highest mountain peaks, tiny songbirds begin preparing for another day. Many species remember remarkably complex routes through forests, fields, and skies. Some migrate across continents, guided by combinations of celestial cues, Earth's magnetic field, landmarks, and inherited instincts that scientists are still working to fully understand. Memory is not uniquely human. Across the natural world, countless creatures depend upon memory in ways that quietly sustain life. A squirrel remembers the locations of hidden food stores scattered beneath autumn leaves. An elephant recognizes distant watering places visited many years before. A salmon finds its way back toward the river where its own life began, guided in part by an extraordinary memory for chemical signatures carried within flowing water. Each species has evolved memory systems suited to its own way of living. These abilities remind us that remembering did not suddenly appear with human civilization. It has been gradually shaped over hundreds of millions of years, refined through countless generations of life, adapting to changing worlds. Imagine standing beside an ancient river flowing through a broad valley. The water visible tonight is entirely new. Yesterday's current has long since continued toward the sea, yet the river itself remains recognizable. Its shape persists through continual change. Memory resembles this quiet continuity. Individual neurons exchange molecules. Proteins are replaced. Cells maintain themselves through constant activity. Even so, the larger patterns endure, allowing a sense of personal identity to continue across years and decades. You are not held together by stillness. You are held together by ongoing renewal. Perhaps that is one of the gentlest lessons neuroscience offers. Continuity does not require permanence. It requires patient change. And as the night deepens, while stars continue their slow journeys across distances almost impossible to imagine, the same quiet principle unfolds inside every resting brain. Countless tiny changes, each too small to notice alone, gradually preserve the story of a lifetime, not as a perfectly fixed record, but as a living landscape that continues to grow, soften, and quietly welcome each new dawn. Beyond the memories we can easily describe lies another quiet form of remembering that often works without words at all. It guides our hands as they tie a familiar knot, steadies our balance as we walk across uneven ground, and helps our fingers find the keys of a well-loved instrument without asking us to consciously recall each movement. This is sometimes called procedural memory, and although it rarely announces itself, it accompanies us through countless ordinary moments. The first time we learn a new skill, every motion may require careful attention. A bicycle feels uncertain beneath us. A musical scale unfolds one note at a time. A new language asks us to pause before every sentence. Yet, with gentle repetition, something changes. Movements that once demanded deliberate thought gradually become quiet companions. The body begins to remember in ways that the conscious mind no longer needs to supervise. Scientists have found that this kind of memory relies on somewhat different networks from those involved in recalling names, places, or personal experiences. Structures such as the basal ganglia and the cerebellum play important roles in refining movement, timing, and coordination. Together, they help transform effort into familiarity, smoothing rough edges through practice that often unfolds over weeks, months, or years. Imagine watching a river flowing around smooth stones beneath clear water. At first, each stone may have been sharp and uneven, shaped by volcanic fire or broken from distant cliffs. Yet season after season, the quiet current passes over them. Tiny grains of sand drift alongside. Gentle pressure continues without pause. Eventually, corners soften. Surfaces become polished until they almost seem to have been carved by careful hands. Learning often follows a similar rhythm. It is not sudden. It is not hurried. It is shaped by countless moments so small that they are almost impossible to notice while they are happening. A pianist does not wake one morning with graceful hands after a single evening of practice. A gardener learns the changing seasons through many years of quiet observation. A sailor comes to understand the sea by watching winds, tides, and clouds through calm mornings and patient nights. Memory grows comfortable through repetition, just as landscapes are slowly shaped by time. Meanwhile, another remarkable quality of the brain quietly reveals itself. It is remarkably efficient. Although the human brain accounts for only a small portion of the body's weight, it performs an astonishing number of tasks while using a relatively modest amount of energy. At any given moment, countless neurons are exchanging signals, maintaining delicate balances of ions, producing proteins, repairing cellular structures, and supporting thoughts, sensations, and memories that together create the experience of being alive. This activity never completely stops. Even during deep sleep, the brain continues its careful work. Even in moments of peaceful silence, hidden networks remain quietly active. One of these networks has become the subject of much scientific interest over the past few decades. Researchers refer to it as the default mode network, a collection of interconnected brain regions that tends to become active when our attention is not focused upon a demanding external task. When the mind gently wanders, recalling the past, imagining the future, reflecting upon ourselves, or simply allowing thoughts to drift, this network often becomes engaged. Rather than representing idleness, these quiet periods may provide opportunities for integrating experiences, strengthening understanding, and maintaining our sense of identity across time. Imagine sitting beside a fire long after the day's work has ended. The flames rise and fall with slow rhythm. Outside, wind moves softly through distant trees. Nothing urgently requires your attention. Thoughts arrive without invitation. Some concern the morning that has passed. Others wander toward tomorrow. Still others settle upon moments from years ago that quietly emerge for reasons impossible to explain. The mind, left undisturbed, often travels through its own landscape with remarkable gentleness. These wandering moments are not necessarily distractions. They may be part of the brain's ongoing effort to weave individual experiences into the broader story of a life. Elsewhere in nature, similar patterns can be found. After heavy rain, streams carry fresh water toward larger rivers. Along the way, countless tiny channels merge and separate, each contributing to a greater flow that eventually reaches the sea. No single droplet determines the course of the river. Instead, its shape emerges from the quiet cooperation of many small currents. Memories, too, seem to gather into larger themes. Individual birthdays become the memory of childhood. Many conversations become the memory of a friendship. Countless ordinary evenings become the feeling of home. Our lives are not remembered as isolated moments alone. They are remembered as patterns gently formed across years. This tendency to discover patterns has helped our species survive for an extraordinarily long time. Recognizing seasonal changes, identifying familiar faces, recalling safe pathways through forests, or noticing subtle signs of approaching, whether all depended upon memory's ability to organize experience into meaningful relationships. The brain is, in many ways, a patient student of patterns. It quietly asks, again and again, what tends to happen together? Morning follows night. Spring follows winter. Voices belong to familiar faces. Certain places bring particular smells. Repeated observations become expectations. Expectations become understanding. Understanding becomes wisdom gathered slowly over time. Long before written language preserved human knowledge, memory served as humanity's first great library. Stories traveled not upon paper, but within living minds. Across deserts, forests, mountains, and coastlines, elders shared histories that reached back through generations. Myths, songs, practical skills, astronomical observations, and family traditions survived because people remembered them carefully, repeating them beneath evening skies illuminated only by stars and quiet fires. Many cultures developed extraordinary techniques to support this remembering. Some arranged information into rhythmic poetry that could be spoken with ease. Others linked stories to journeys across familiar landscapes, creating mental pathways that guided memory from one idea to the next. Modern researchers studying memory have found that such methods often make use of the brain's remarkable ability to connect information with places, images, and meaningful relationships. Perhaps this is not surprising. For countless generations, humans lived close to landscapes that changed slowly across the seasons. Hills, rivers, forests, and constellations became dependable companions. Linking knowledge to familiar surroundings allowed memory to grow naturally from the world itself. Imagine walking along a quiet woodland path at dawn. Each bend reveals another familiar landmark, a moss-covered stone, a fallen oak, a narrow bridge crossing a gentle stream. You need no written directions. The landscape quietly reminds you where to go. Memory often works in much the same way. Ideas become easier to recall when they are connected to places, emotions, stories, or other memories already known. The mind prefers relationships over isolation. It welcomes connection. Far beyond the forests of Earth, another form of memory exists in a very different sense. The universe itself carries traces of its own history. Light requires time to travel. When astronomers observe distant galaxies, they are not seeing those galaxies exactly as they are today. They are seeing light that began its journey millions or even billions of years ago. In this quiet way, the cosmos preserves a record of its past. Every star becomes a messenger from another time. Every distant galaxy offers a glimpse into ancient chapters of cosmic history. Unlike the human brain, the universe does not remember through neurons or synapses. Yet its present still contains echoes of what came before. The elements within our bodies were forged inside long-vanished stars. The oxygen we breathe, the calcium in our bones, the iron carried through our blood, all emerged from processes that unfolded across unimaginable spans of time. In a sense, each of us carries a gentle memory of ancient stars, not through conscious thought, but through the very atoms that quietly sustain life. There is something deeply calming about this perspective. The story of memory does not begin with humanity. It does not even begin with Earth. It reaches back through billions of years of cosmic evolution, through generations of stars quietly living and fading, each contributing material that would one day become oceans, forests, mountains, and minds capable of wondering where memories come from. As clouds drift across the face of the moon and the night grows still, it becomes easier to appreciate how many different forms remembrance can take. A tree remembers seasons in the rings hidden within its trunk. A glacier remembers ancient winters in layers of compressed ice. A canyon remembers rivers that flowed for millions of years. The night sky remembers the distant past in every arriving beam of starlight. And within the gentle architecture of the human brain, memories continue to form, soften, and quietly reshape themselves, not in perfect permanence, but in patient harmony with the living world that surrounds them. Perhaps that is why remembering often feels less like opening a locked chest and more like returning to a familiar landscape. The path may have changed slightly. New flowers may bloom where none once grew. A fallen branch may rest across the trail. Yet beneath these quiet changes, something deeply recognizable remains, waiting with calm familiarity, ready to welcome us once again. There's a quiet moment that many people have experienced, often without giving it much thought. You walk into a room with a clear purpose, only to find that, upon crossing the doorway, the reason for entering seems to dissolve into stillness. A few moments later, perhaps after returning to where you began, the forgotten intention gently returns, as though it had merely been waiting in another corner of the mind. Although this experience may seem curious, it reflects something rather ordinary about the way memory interacts with attention. Our thoughts are closely tied to context. The brain is constantly organizing experiences according to where they happen, when they occur, and what surrounds them. A change in environment can sometimes encourage one pattern of activity to settle, while another quietly takes its place. Scientists have explored this phenomenon with carefully designed experiments. While the details are still being investigated, current evidence suggests that moving between distinct environments can subtly influence how the brain organizes ongoing information. A doorway, simple though it may appear, can become a gentle boundary between one mental context and another. There is something almost comforting about this. The mind is not carelessly losing its place. It is patiently arranging experience into meaningful chapters. Imagine wandering through the quiet halls of an old monastery built centuries ago. Stone corridors connect peaceful rooms where monks once copied manuscripts by candlelight. Each room has its own atmosphere. One carries the faint scent of old parchment. Another opens toward a garden where rain falls softly upon moss-covered stones. A third looks across distant hills beneath slow-moving clouds. As you move from one room to the next, your attention naturally shifts. Thoughts that belong to one space become quieter, while new observations gently emerge. The architecture itself helps organize awareness. In much the same way, the brain appears to use context as part of its remarkable system for arranging memories. Places become gentle companions to experience. A favorite chair recalls evenings spent reading. The sound of waves recalls long walks along a familiar shore. A certain street awakens memories that remain quiet almost everywhere else. Location becomes part of remembering. Meanwhile, there is another form of memory that is so deeply woven into everyday life that it often passes unnoticed. It is known as perspective memory, the ability to remember something that has not yet happened. At first, this may seem like a contradiction. How can memory concern the future? Yet every time you remember to water a plant tomorrow morning, to greet a friend on their birthday, or to remove bread from the oven before it bakes too long, perspective memory is quietly at work. Rather than recalling the past alone, the brain also stores gentle intentions for moments still waiting to arrive. Researchers believe that several regions of the brain cooperate to support this ability, including areas of the frontal lobes involved in planning and organization. The result is a remarkably flexible system that allows present awareness to carry quiet promises into the future. One might think of it as placing a small lantern beside a path that has not yet been walked. When the proper moment arrives, the lantern is already waiting. No one has stood beside it through the entire night. Yet somehow, its light appears exactly when needed. This gentle anticipation allows daily life to unfold with remarkable ease. Without it, every future intention would require constant, conscious attention. Instead, The mind patiently carries many small responsibilities beneath awareness until the appropriate time quietly arrives. Far beyond human experience, nature offers similar examples of patient preparation. Each autumn, countless trees gradually withdraw nutrients from their leaves before winter arrives. Long before the first snowfall, subtle changes have already begun deep within their branches. The brilliant colors that brighten forests each year are not signs of sudden transformation, but of quiet processes unfolding over many weeks. Seeds rest beneath frozen soil throughout winter, carrying silent instructions that will only awaken when warmth and moisture return. Migratory birds begin journeys spanning thousands of kilometers, guided by rhythms that have evolved over countless generations. Preparation often begins long before visible change. The brain, too, quietly prepares for moments still unseen. Another fascinating feature of memory emerges when we consider how differently time can feel depending upon experience. A quiet afternoon spent watching clouds drift across an open sky may seem to pass gently, almost unnoticed. Yet years later, that same afternoon may remain vividly present because it carried a sense of peace, unlike many ordinary days. By contrast, a week filled with hurried routines may seem lengthy while it unfolds, yet leave surprisingly little behind once it has passed. Memory and time are close companions, but they do not measure one another in identical ways. Psychologists have long observed that novelty often influences how richly experiences are remembered. New environments, unfamiliar landscapes, and meaningful events tend to leave more detailed traces than routines repeated countless times. This may help explain why childhood summers sometimes appear so expansive in memory. For a young child, nearly everything is new. Each insect discovered beneath a stone, each snowfall, each unfamiliar flower, each journey along a road never traveled before. The world presents itself with endless first experiences. The brain responds by forming many rich memories. As adulthood arrives, familiar routines become more common. Days remain full, yet they often resemble those that came before. Memory quietly compresses these repeated patterns into broader summaries rather than preserving every individual detail. There is no sadness in this. It is simply another example of the brain's remarkable efficiency. Imagine standing beside a shoreline where waves have gently smoothed countless shells over many years. Some shells retain intricate patterns because they arrived only recently. Others have become almost perfectly smooth through long companionship with the sea. Both belong to the same shore. Both tell quiet stories of time. Memory does something similar. Extraordinary moments often remain finely detailed. Ordinary moments gently blend together into broader landscapes. Together, they create the texture of a life. Elsewhere, in laboratories illuminated by soft instrument lights long before dawn, researchers continue investigating one of neuroscience's most intriguing questions. Why do certain memories remain vivid for decades, while others disappear within hours? part of the answer appears to involve emotion. Experiences associated with strong feelings are often remembered more easily than emotionally neutral events. Structures, such as the amygdala, interact with memory systems, influencing how certain experiences are encoded and later retrieved. This does not mean only dramatic moments are remembered. Gentle emotions matter as well. A feeling of belonging, a quiet evening beside someone you love, the peaceful sound of rain upon a familiar roof, warm sunlight entering through a window on an ordinary morning. These calm experiences may also become lasting memories precisely because they carried emotional meaning. The brain is not interested only in excitement. It is interested in significance. Sometimes significance arrives very quietly. Imagine a small wooden bridge crossing a slow-moving stream deep within an old forest. Thousands of people may pass over it during many years. Most crossings are ordinary. Footsteps come and go. Leaves drift upon the water below. Birdsong echoes softly among distant trees. Then, one evening, someone pauses halfway across the bridge as the setting sun fills the valley with golden light. Nothing extraordinary happens beyond that simple moment of stillness. Yet years later, it is that quiet pause which returns most clearly. Not because it was loud, not because it was dramatic, but because, for reasons perhaps impossible to fully explain, it mattered. Memory has always possessed this quiet wisdom. It gently asks not only what happened, it also asks what it meant. As the night grows deeper, this distinction begins to feel increasingly peaceful. Our minds are not simply collecting events like stones placed into boxes. They are patiently gathering meaning, connections, relationships, small moments of understanding. The result is something far richer than a chronological record. It is the gradual shaping of identity itself. Each remembered kindness, each lesson learned with patience, each landscape walked beneath changing skies, each voice heard in comfort. These become part of the quiet architecture from which tomorrow's thoughts will grow. And just as rivers continue flowing while reflecting stars that have long since faded from the heavens, the mind carries traces of countless moments whose influence continues long after their details have softened into silence. Even when names fade or dates become uncertain, the gentle impressions left behind can still shape the way we greet another morning, recognize a familiar smile, or find comfort in the simple feeling of being home. There is a gentle distinction that neuroscientists often make between remembering what happened and remembering how something feels. These two forms of memory frequently travel together, yet they do not always follow the same path through the brain. It is possible to forget the exact words spoken during an afternoon many years ago, while still carrying the quiet warmth that the conversation left behind. Likewise, the details of a distant journey may slowly soften, while the feeling of standing beneath an immense sky remains unexpectedly vivid. This tells us something subtle about the architecture of memory. The mind does not preserve experience as though it were pressing flowers between the pages of a book. Instead, it gathers many different qualities of a moment: its sights, sounds, emotions, movements, and meanings, and allows each to find its own place within an intricate living network. Over time, some threads become brighter, others grow faint, yet together they continue to suggest the shape of the whole. Imagine an old quilt stitched by many careful hands across several generations. Some fabrics remain rich in color despite the passing years. Others have faded beneath countless seasons of sunlight. A few patches have become so worn that only their outlines remain. And yet, viewed from a quiet distance, the entire quilt still tells a single story. Memory often resembles this gentle mosaic. Its strength lies not in preserving every thread with perfect precision, but in allowing the whole pattern to endure. Researchers studying autobiographical memory have found that people often remember the emotional character of important experiences, even when many factual details have gradually changed. This does not mean that emotion is immune to forgetting. Rather, emotional significance can sometimes remain accessible through pathways that differ from those supporting exact factual recall. The result is something deeply human. A familiar kindness may continue shaping us long after the precise conversation has disappeared. A place where we once felt safe may still bring peace decades later, even if its appearance has quietly changed. The memory becomes less about recording events and more about carrying forward meaning. Meanwhile, somewhere beyond the glow of city lights, an owl crosses a moonlit forest almost without sound. Its wings are shaped in such a way that the air flows gently across them, reducing the noise of flight to a remarkable degree. Beneath the trees, small streams continue their patient journeys over smooth stones. Ferns collect beads of cool water from the evening mist. Above, stars slowly drift across the dark sky, keeping time with a universe that has never hurried. Nature is filled with quiet forms of memory, not memory in the human sense, but traces of the past gently carried into the present. The rings inside an ancient cedar speak of seasons, both generous and difficult. Layers of sediment beneath an old lake preserve tiny grains of pollen from forests that disappeared thousands of years ago. Coral reefs grow one delicate layer upon another, recording changing oceans through centuries of patient construction. Even the wind leaves its signature. Sand dunes remember prevailing breezes in their graceful curves. Snow remembers shifting air in the delicate geometry of each drifting ridge. The earth carries its own history with extraordinary patience. Human memory belongs to this larger pattern of continuity. It, too, leaves gentle traces. Far beneath ordinary awareness, proteins within neurons are constantly being created, transported, repaired, and replaced. Cell membranes renew themselves. Tiny structures called dendritic spines, which help neurons communicate with one another, can subtly change their shapes over time in response to experience. None of this renewal feels noticeable. We do not sense these quiet adjustments as they happen, and yet, together, they help support memories that may remain with us for decades. There is something almost paradoxical here. The physical materials of the brain are continually changing. The memories they support can remain surprisingly stable. Scientists continue to investigate exactly how this remarkable continuity is maintained. The answer appears to involve many overlapping biological processes working together, rather than any single permanent molecule acting as a fixed storage place. In other words, the brain remembers not by standing perfectly still, but by continuously caring for itself. Imagine an old stone bridge crossing a peaceful river. Individual stones may occasionally need careful repair. Small plants growing between them are gently removed. Weather slowly smooths rough edges. Craftspeople return from time to time to strengthen places that have weakened. The bridge remains because it is tended. Its continuity arises through quiet maintenance. The brain appears to follow a similar philosophy. Its stability is an active process. Its permanence is gently renewed. This perspective invites a calmer way of thinking about ourselves. We often imagine identity as something fixed and unchanging. Yet biology suggests something more fluid. We remain ourselves not because every part stays the same, but because countless small processes quietly preserve relationships across time. The melody continues even though each note eventually fades. Elsewhere, another remarkable aspect of memory reveals itself through language. Every language spoken on Earth contains words that have traveled across generations. Some have changed only slightly over hundreds of years. Others have wandered through many cultures, gradually adapting their sounds while carrying familiar meanings into entirely new places. When a child learns to speak, they are not inventing language anew. They are receiving an inheritance assembled across centuries. Every sentence quietly carries echoes of people long gone, the stories of grandparents, the conversations of travelers, the observations of farmers watching changing skies, the questions of philosophers wondering about the stars. Memory extends beyond individual minds. It also lives within cultures. Songs preserve history. Recipes preserve landscapes. Traditional crafts preserve accumulated knowledge. Ceremonies preserve shared identity. In this way, humanity remembers together. No single person carries the whole story. Instead, each generation contributes another careful chapter before quietly passing it onward. Imagine standing inside an old library just before dawn. Tall wooden shelves stretch upward into soft shadows. Thousands upon thousands of books rest silently in orderly rows. Some volumes are centuries old, others arrived only recently. No single book contains everything, yet together they hold an immense conversation unfolding across time. Human memory resembles this living library. Personal memories fill one shelf, family stories another, scientific discoveries another still, works of art, music, maps, observations of birds returning each spring, records of eclipses watched beneath clear skies. Every generation quietly adds to the collection. Meanwhile, our individual minds wander through its endless corridors, borrowing wisdom gathered long before we were born. This shared remembering has allowed civilization itself to grow with remarkable patience. Astronomers built upon observations recorded by earlier astronomers. Doctors learned from generations of careful physicians. Builders refined techniques developed over centuries. Each new understanding rested gently upon countless earlier memories. Knowledge itself became a form of collective remembrance. And yet, despite all that has been preserved, forgetting also plays an essential role. Languages gradually change, customs evolve, ideas are revised, scientific theories become more complete as fresh evidence appears. Memory is not meant to freeze the world. It helps the world continue growing. Just as forests renew themselves through cycles of growth and decay, cultures also remain healthy by balancing remembrance with adaptation. The same quiet principle appears again and again throughout nature. A river remembers its valley while continuously flowing. A forest remembers its ecosystem while welcoming new seedlings. The night sky remembers ancient stars while giving birth to new ones. The brain remembers yesterday while preparing for tomorrow. Nothing remains entirely unchanged. Nothing is entirely lost. Everything participates in an ongoing conversation between past and present. As the hours of the night continue their gentle passage, perhaps this becomes one of the most comforting lessons that memory offers. We do not carry the past by holding every detail forever. We carry it by allowing its quiet wisdom to become part of who we are. The exact shape of an old path through the woods may gradually fade, yet the confidence gained from walking it remains. The individual lessons of many peaceful mornings may blend together, yet they continue to teach us how to greet the sunrise with calm. The faces of childhood neighbors may become less distinct, yet the feeling of belonging they once gave us can still accompany us through entirely different landscapes. Memory, in this way, is less like a collection of perfectly preserved photographs and more like the slow light of dawn spreading across distant hills. It does not illuminate everything equally. Instead, it reveals what is needed with quiet patience, allowing the outlines of a life to emerge gently from the darkness, one familiar shape at a time, until the whole landscape feels quietly, reassuringly, like home. If you have ever looked through a box of old photographs on a quiet afternoon, you may have noticed an interesting feeling. Some images immediately call forth a rich tapestry of memories, while others seem strangely distant, even if they captured moments that were once important. A familiar smile may awaken the sound of laughter, the warmth of summer air, and the scent of freshly cut grass all at once. Another photograph, taken only days later, may remain almost silent. This difference reminds us that memory is not measured simply by the passage of time. Rather, it grows through connection. Some experiences become deeply intertwined with many others, while some remain only lightly attached to the larger network of our lives. Neuroscientists often speak of retrieval cues, the gentle signals that help the brain locate a particular memory. These cues can take many forms: a melody heard in passing, the texture of an old wooden table beneath one's fingertips, the distant fragrance of pine carried on cool evening air, even the particular angle of sunlight entering a familiar room can quietly invite the past to return. The memory was not hidden because it had vanished. It was simply waiting for the right companion. Imagine a vast meadow at first light. Morning mist rests just above the grasses, softening every distant shape. Wildflowers remain closed, still waiting for the warmth of the rising sun. The landscape appears quiet, almost empty. Then, little by little, sunlight spreads across the field. Colors emerge. Individual flowers become visible. Small insects begin their patient journeys among the stems. Nothing new has arrived. The meadow was always there. Only the light has changed. Retrieval cues often work in much the same way. They do not necessarily create memories. Instead, they illuminate pathways that already exist, allowing what was once hidden beneath the quiet mist of forgetting to become gently visible once more. Meanwhile, another remarkable quality of the brain quietly accompanies every memory we form. It is the ability to distinguish between experiences that truly happened and those we merely imagined. Most of the time, this distinction feels effortless. We know the difference between recalling a childhood walk through the woods and imagining a forest we have never visited. Yet the underlying biology is surprisingly complex. Current research suggests that remembering and imagining share many overlapping neural systems. When we picture a place we hope to visit someday, or quietly imagine tomorrow's sunrise, parts of the brain involved in recalling past experiences also become active. This makes a certain kind of sense. To imagine something new, the brain often draws upon pieces of what it already knows. The color of one sky, the shape of another mountain, the sound of waves remembered from a distant shore. Fragments of experience become building blocks for gentle imagination. One possibility, supported by a growing body of evidence, is that memory evolved not only to preserve the past, but also to help us prepare for possible futures. The same flexible system that allows us to remember yesterday may also allow us to quietly consider tomorrow. Imagine an architect standing before an empty field. No building yet exists. Yet within the architect's mind, familiar materials begin arranging themselves into new forms. Stone remembered from one village, windows admired in another, the warmth of afternoon light entering a room visited years before. Old memories become ingredients for something that has never existed. The brain often approaches imagination with similar patience. It borrows, it rearranges, it gently explores possibilities. This quiet partnership between memory and imagination is one of the reasons human creativity can feel so natural. New ideas rarely appear from nothing. More often, they emerge from countless older experiences, gradually finding unexpected harmony with one another. Far above the clouds, astronomers observe another kind of remembering. Some of the light arriving at Earth's telescopes tonight began its journey before the first human civilizations appeared. Some began long before our species existed at all. A photon leaving a distant galaxy may travel through the darkness of intergalactic space for hundreds of millions of years before quietly reaching the mirror of a telescope on a calm mountain peak. The universe keeps no diary, yet light itself carries history. Every beam tells a patient story about where it has been. Every observation becomes an encounter with another moment in time. In this way, astronomy is often described as looking into the past. The farther we see, the farther back in time we gently gaze. There's something wonderfully calming about this perspective. The cosmos does not rush. Galaxies drift through space over billions of years. Stars are born inside vast clouds of gas and dust, shine with quiet steadiness for immense stretches of time, and eventually return much of their material to the universe, where new generations of stars may one day form. Everything unfolds with extraordinary patience. The brain, though immeasurably smaller, seems to share this appreciation for gradual change. A memory formed in childhood may continue influencing a lifetime. A lesson learned with kindness may quietly shape decisions decades later. Neither process depends upon haste. Both reveal the quiet power of time. Elsewhere on Earth, beneath the surface of a calm northern lake, sediments settle one delicate layer at a time. Each spring brings grains carried by melting snow. Each autumn adds fallen leaves that slowly sink into still water. Tiny shells from microscopic organisms become part of the lake bed. Year after year, almost unnoticed, these layers accumulate into an archive of changing climates, shifting forests, and distant volcanic eruptions. Scientists who study these sediments are, in a sense, reading Earth's memories. Each layer preserves subtle clues about the conditions under which it formed. No single grain tells the whole story. Together, they reveal thousands of years. The human brain also builds understanding gradually. One conversation teaches patience. Another encourages curiosity. A third brings comfort during difficult times. Individually, they may seem ordinary. Together, they quietly become wisdom. Wisdom itself may be thought of as memory transformed by reflection. It is not merely the accumulation of experiences. It is the gentle integration of those experiences into a broader understanding of life. This process often takes many years. It cannot easily be hurried. Imagine an old vineyard stretching across gentle hills beneath a pale evening sky. Each vine has known many seasons. Spring blossoms, summer warmth, autumn harvests, winter frost resting silently upon bare branches. No single season defines the vineyard. Its character emerges through their quiet succession. In much the same way, our understanding of the world rarely comes from one remarkable event alone. It grows through many ordinary days, many conversations, many quiet observations, many mornings watching sunlight gradually spread across familiar landscapes. Memory patiently gathers these moments. Reflection gently weaves them together. From their partnership comes perspective. Researchers continue exploring how this integration occurs within the brain. They study how experiences gradually become less dependent upon the hippocampus and more broadly represented across the cortex. They investigate how sleep supports this process, how repetition strengthens it, and how emotion sometimes shapes its lasting influence. Each new discovery adds another careful brushstroke to an unfinished picture. No scientist expects every mystery to disappear overnight. Science itself advances through remarkable patience. Questions lead to observations. Observations lead to experiments. Experiments suggest new questions. Understanding deepens slowly, much like a river quietly carving its valley through stone. There is something deeply reassuring in that rhythm. Knowledge need not arrive all at once. Neither must memory. Both are lifelong companions. As the night continues to unfold, the world beyond your window may have become quieter still. The wind may have settled among the trees. Clouds may drift lazily across the stars, revealing one constellation before softly concealing another. Somewhere, waves continue meeting a distant shore with the same patient rhythm they have kept for countless generations. Inside the resting mind, another tide quietly rises and falls. Neurons exchange gentle signals. Networks strengthen and soften. Fragments of yesterday find their places beside years long past. Nothing demands attention. Nothing asks to be forced. The mind, like the sea beneath moonlight, knows its own quiet rhythm. And perhaps that is one of the most peaceful truths hidden within the science of memory. So much of what allows us to remain ourselves happens without effort. Beneath every calm breath, beneath every dream, beneath every moment of restful sleep, the brain continues its careful work, not striving for perfection, but patiently tending the living landscape of experience, so that when morning eventually arrives, it will once again feel familiar, welcoming, and quietly full of possibility. There's a quiet comfort in realizing that the brain is never asked to remember the world alone. Every memory we carry is shaped not only by neurons and synapses, but also by the steady presence of the senses. Vision, hearing, touch, smell, and taste each contribute their own gentle threads, weaving together experiences that become richer than any one sensation could provide on its own. Consider, for a moment, the simple experience of walking through a forest after a light rain. The path beneath your feet feels soft with damp earth. Leaves overhead release the occasional drop of water, each one falling with quiet patience. The air carries the scent of moss, pine, and distant soil that has rested beneath trees for countless seasons. Somewhere nearby, a stream moves over smooth stones, its steady murmur blending with birdsong that seems to drift effortlessly through the cool morning air. Years later, it may not be the exact arrangement of trees that first returns to memory. Instead, it may be the fragrance of wet earth, or the gentle rhythm of water, or the feeling of cool air against your face. One small sensation quietly opens the door to the whole landscape. Among all the senses, smell has long fascinated neuroscientists because of its unusually close relationship with memory. Unlike most sensory information, which passes through the brain's thalamus before reaching higher processing areas, signals from the olfactory system have more direct connections with regions involved in emotion and memory. This arrangement helps explain why certain scents can awaken memories with remarkable immediacy. The aroma of fresh bread may quietly return someone to a childhood kitchen. The fragrance of lavender may recall a peaceful summer evening. The salty air of the sea may summon an entire coastline long unseen. These moments often arrive gently, almost unexpectedly. There is no conscious search. The memory simply unfolds as naturally as morning light spreading across a quiet valley. Scientists continue to study exactly why these experiences can feel so vivid. But the close relationship between smell, emotion, and memory is one of the most consistently observed features of human cognition. It is a beautiful reminder that memory is not only something we think, it is also something we feel. Imagine an old wooden chest resting in the corner of a peaceful attic. Inside are letters, pressed flowers, smooth stones collected from distant beaches, and small objects whose importance might not be obvious to anyone else. Opening the chest does not merely reveal the objects. It awakens entire seasons of life. The letters recall familiar voices. The flowers recall warm afternoons. The stones recall the endless rhythm of waves beneath open skies. The objects themselves remain quiet, yet together they invite memory to bloom. Our senses often play the same gentle role. They become small keys that quietly unlock much larger rooms. Meanwhile, another extraordinary feature of memory unfolds almost continuously throughout waking life, though we seldom notice it. The brain is constantly making predictions. As you walk through a familiar home in the dark, you expect the hallway to continue where it always has. When you hear the beginning of a familiar melody, you quietly anticipate the notes that will follow. When watching gentle waves reach the shore, your mind naturally expects another wave to arrive after the last one retreats. These predictions arise because memory allows the brain to compare the present with countless experiences from the past. Current evidence suggests that perception itself is not simply a passive recording of the outside world. Instead, the brain continuously combines incoming sensory information with expectations shaped by previous experience. In a quiet sense, every moment is a conversation between memory and perception. The eyes gather light. The ears receive sound. The skin feels cool air. At the same time, memory softly asks, "Have we encountered something like this before?" Usually, the answer comes almost instantly. The world feels familiar because the brain has spent a lifetime learning its gentle patterns. Imagine standing beside the ocean at twilight. Wave after wave reaches the shore. None are perfectly identical. Each rises differently. Each reflects the fading sky in its own way. Yet together they form a rhythm that becomes deeply familiar. The brain delights in such rhythms, not because it wishes to eliminate surprise, but because patterns allow life to unfold with graceful efficiency. Without memory, every sound would seem entirely new, every face unfamiliar, every doorway unexpected. Instead, memory quietly smooths the edges of experience, allowing attention to rest upon what is changing, while familiarity gently supports everything else. Far beneath the surface of the ocean, another kind of memory exists, not within living minds, but within the earth itself. Deep layers of rock preserve tiny magnetic signatures left behind as molten minerals cooled millions of years ago. These minerals aligned themselves with Earth's magnetic field at the moment they solidified, quietly recording information about the planet's ancient orientation. Today, geologists can study these subtle patterns to understand how continents slowly drifted across the globe over immense spans of time. The rocks remember, not through consciousness, not through thought, but through enduring physical traces. Likewise, glaciers preserve bubbles of ancient air. Tree rings preserve seasons of growth and drought. Ice cores preserve delicate records of changing climates, stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. Nature writes its history patiently. The pages are made of stone, ice, wood, and sediment rather than paper. Human memory belongs to this wider tradition of quiet continuity. It, too, preserves traces, though its language is electrical and chemical rather than geological. Long before written calendars, people learned to follow the changing seasons through careful observation and remembrance. They remembered where certain flowers first appeared each spring. They remembered when rivers usually overflowed their banks. They remembered which stars rose above the eastern horizon before the arrival of winter. Memory allowed human communities to live in harmony with repeating cycles that unfolded over generations. Even today, many people carry subtle seasonal memories without consciously realizing it. The first cool breeze of autumn may bring an unexpected feeling of familiarity. The scent of flowering trees may quietly announce the return of spring before a calendar confirms it. The angle of evening sunlight may remind us that another year is slowly turning. Memory is wonderfully sensitive to rhythm, not only daily rhythms, but yearly rhythms, lifetime rhythms, even the quiet rhythms of history itself. Researchers studying circadian biology have discovered that memory also interacts closely with the body's internal clocks. Sleep and wakefulness influence learning. Hormones fluctuate according to time of day. Certain forms of memory may be strengthened more effectively under particular conditions, though many details continue to be investigated. The brain is not separate from the rest of the body. It moves together with it. Heartbeats, breathing, changing light, the quiet cycle of waking and sleeping. Everything participates in one living rhythm. Imagine watching the tide slowly rise beneath a pale moon. No individual wave causes the ocean to fill the bay. Instead, countless gentle movements combine into one larger transformation. It is with memory. One conversation teaches little by itself, one sunrise, one quiet walk, one evening spent listening to rain. Each seems small, yet together they gradually shape the person who experiences them. Identity grows almost invisibly, not through dramatic moments alone, but through thousands of peaceful, ordinary ones. Perhaps this is why so many cherished memories seem, at first glance, surprisingly simple. A cup of tea shared in silence, snow falling beyond a warmly lit window, a long train journey through mist-covered fields, the sound of pages turning in a quiet room, a familiar hand resting gently in another. The brain does not always measure importance according to spectacle. Very often, it measures according to meaning. And meaning is frequently found in calm places. As the evening deepens into the quieter hours before dawn, there is a comforting thought hidden within all of this research. Every day, your mind gathers far more than facts. It gathers textures, rhythms, gentle voices, changing seasons, the feeling of morning sunlight, the sound of distant rain, the peaceful certainty that some places and some people have become familiar. These quiet impressions settle together over time, becoming part of an inner landscape that is uniquely your own. Like an old forest growing slowly across the years, it is never exactly the same from one season to the next. New paths appear. Ancient trees continue to stand. Fallen leaves become rich soil for fresh growth. And beneath the canopy, where light filters softly through countless branches, memory continues its patient work, quietly preserving not only the story of where you have been, but also the gentle sense of belonging that allows every new journey to begin. One of the most reassuring discoveries in modern neuroscience is that the brain is not as rigid as it was once believed to be. For many years, scientists imagined that the adult brain changed very little after childhood, as though its pathways were gradually fixed into place, like mortar drying between stones. We now understand that the picture is far more gentle, and in many ways, far more hopeful. Throughout life, the brain continues to adapt. New experiences reshape existing networks. Skills become more refined with practice. Fresh memories find places among older ones. Some connections strengthen through repeated use, while others quietly fade as they become less necessary. This remarkable capacity for change is known as neuroplasticity. The word itself may sound technical, but the idea behind it is beautifully simple. The brain remains a living landscape. It continues responding to the world. Imagine a wide meadow after the first snowfall of winter. At dawn, the snow lies perfectly smooth beneath a pale sky. There are no footprints, yet. Only an unbroken blanket of quiet white stretching toward distant trees. As the day unfolds, gentle paths begin to appear. A fox crosses toward the forest. A family walks beside a frozen stream. Small birds leave delicate patterns near scattered seeds. None of these paths were planned in advance. They emerged because living creatures moved through the landscape. The brain creates pathways in much the same manner. Experiences leave traces. Repeated journeys make those traces easier to follow. With time, familiar routes become well established. And yet, if they are no longer used, new snow may one day soften their outlines again. There is something deeply peaceful about this image. It reminds us that memory is not carved into stone. It is written into a living world. Meanwhile, somewhere deep within the brain, billions of supporting cells quietly accompany every neuron. Although neurons often receive most of the attention, they are far from working alone. Among these companions are glial cells, once thought to serve only as passive support. Over the past several decades, scientists have come to appreciate that these cells contribute to many important functions, including maintaining healthy environments around neurons, helping to regulate communication, and supporting the brain's remarkable ability to adapt. The name glia comes from a word meaning glue. Yet these cells are far more than simple adhesive. They nourish, they protect, they quietly help maintain the delicate balance upon which thought and memory depend. It is another reminder that even within the smallest landscapes of biology, cooperation is often more important than individuality. Imagine an ancient cathedral standing peacefully at the center of a quiet town. Visitors naturally admire its tall windows, graceful arches, and intricate carvings. Yet hidden beneath the visible beauty are countless unseen stones, wooden beams, and carefully placed foundations that make the entire structure possible. The most visible parts could never stand alone. The brain shares this quiet humility. Every memory depends upon countless processes working together with extraordinary patience. Far beyond awareness, tiny blood vessels deliver oxygen and nutrients to active neurons. Specialized cells remove waste products. Chemical messengers are produced, released, and carefully recycled. Proteins are assembled with astonishing precision. The miracle is not that one part performs perfectly. The miracle is that so many parts quietly cooperate. Nature often seems to prefer harmony over spectacle. Elsewhere in the living world, forests reveal a similar lesson. For generations, ecologists focused primarily on individual trees. More recent research has shown that forests are also deeply connected beneath the soil. Fine fungal networks intertwine with roots, helping transport nutrients and chemical signals between neighboring plants. While popular descriptions sometimes exaggerate these relationships, current evidence suggests that underground connections can indeed play important ecological roles. No tree truly stands alone. Its roots meet those of countless neighbors. Water flows quietly through hidden pathways. Nutrients travel beneath the forest floor. Life becomes possible through relationships. The brain, too, is a community rather than a collection of isolated parts. No neuron remembers independently. No single cell contains an entire childhood. Instead, memories emerge from relationships spread across vast networks. Meaning arises through connection. As in the forest, the beauty lies not only in the individual branches, but in the living web that quietly joins them together. Long before the invention of magnetic resonance imaging or electron microscopes, Natural philosophers often looked to the night sky when searching for metaphors about the mind. Even today, the comparison feels strangely fitting. The human brain contains tens of billions of neurons, each capable of forming many thousands of connections. The resulting network is so intricate that it almost defies imagination. Seen from above, a brightly illuminated city at night offers a gentle analogy. Roads glow beneath countless small lights. Neighborhoods connect through winding streets. Bridges carry quiet streams of movement across rivers. Most lights remain steady. Others brighten briefly before fading again. Patterns emerge without any single light directing the whole. The brain operates with similar elegance. No central observer watches every thought. No hidden conductor directs every memory. Instead, understanding emerges from the quiet cooperation of immense numbers of simple interactions. This idea has become one of the great themes of modern neuroscience. Complexity can arise from remarkable simplicity. Elsewhere, in another corner of science, physicists describe how galaxies themselves emerge from countless individual stars, each following familiar physical laws, while collectively creating graceful spiral arms stretching across unimaginable distances. Nature seems to enjoy this pattern. Simple relationships, patient repetition, beautiful complexity. The same principle appears in snowflakes, in coral reefs, in rivers branching toward the sea, in clouds gathering above mountains, and quietly within every human memory. Imagine sitting beside a calm lake late at night. The surface reflects an entire sky filled with stars. Each star appears separate. Each shines from an astonishing distance. Yet together, they create a single peaceful panorama stretching from one horizon to the other. Memory often feels this way. Individual moments may seem small while they happen. A page read before bed, a conversation during an evening walk, the smell of rain arriving before a storm, the quiet sound of dishes being washed after dinner. No single experience appears extraordinary, yet together they illuminate an entire life. Perhaps this is why people sometimes struggle to explain what they miss when remembering another time. It is rarely one isolated event. More often, it is the gentle constellation formed by many ordinary moments quietly belonging together. Researchers studying aging have observed another encouraging truth. Although certain aspects of memory may become slower over the years, many forms of knowledge continue to deepen throughout adulthood. Vocabulary often expands. Understanding of relationships grows richer. The ability to recognize patterns shaped by long experience may continue developing across decades. Wisdom does not depend solely upon remembering every detail. It often depends upon seeing larger connections. Imagine an old navigator standing quietly upon the deck of a wooden ship beneath a sky filled with stars. The navigator may not recall every cloud from every voyage, nor every wave, nor every gust of wind. Yet, after many years at sea, something deeper has developed. The stars themselves have become familiar companions. The changing tides reveal subtle meanings. The winds speak through gentle variations, almost invisible to inexperienced eyes. Knowledge has matured into quiet understanding. The brain, too, gradually learns to see beyond isolated events. Individual memories gather into broader patterns. Patterns become insight. Insight becomes calm judgment. There is no need for haste. Such understanding grows with remarkable patience. As another hour of the night quietly unfolds, perhaps it is comforting to realize that memory is not asking us to hold every grain of sand that has ever passed through our hands. Instead, it gently shapes those countless grains into a shoreline, a familiar place where waves of experience continue to arrive, recede, and return again. Each tide leaves something behind. Each tide carries something away. And through that endless, peaceful rhythm, the landscape of a life slowly becomes more complete, not because nothing changes, but because change itself has become part of its enduring beauty. There is a quiet phenomenon that many people encounter from time to time, often without realizing that it has a name. You meet someone whose face seems immediately familiar, and for a few peaceful moments, you are certain that you have met before. Yet, as the conversation continues, you discover that this meeting is entirely new. At other times, the opposite occurs. A familiar face appears strangely unfamiliar for just an instant before recognition gently settles back into place. These small moments reveal that recognition itself is a remarkable achievement. It is not a single switch turning on or off. It is the patient cooperation of many different systems working together. Scientists often distinguish between two related experiences: familiarity and recollection. Familiarity is the quiet feeling that something has been encountered before. Recollection adds detail. It answers gentle questions. Where did we meet? When did that happen? Who else was there? Both experiences are forms of memory, yet they appear to rely upon somewhat different neural processes. Current evidence suggests that regions within the medial temporal lobe contribute in distinct ways to these forms of remembering. The precise relationships continue to be studied, but together they create the effortless sense of recognition that accompanies so much of daily life. Imagine walking through an old botanical garden in the early hours of morning. The gates have just opened. Mist lingers among the pathways. Birdsong drifts softly through the branches overhead. As you round a gentle bend, you notice a flowering tree. Something about it feels deeply familiar. Perhaps you visited this garden years ago. Perhaps you saw a similar tree somewhere else entirely. For a quiet moment, familiarity arrives before certainty. Then, gradually, memory gathers more pieces. The nearby pond, the stone bench, the winding path leading toward a glass greenhouse. Recognition slowly blossoms. The brain often remembers in this graceful sequence. First comes the feeling. Then, when the pathways are gently illuminated, the surrounding story begins to unfold. Meanwhile, there is another aspect of memory that is almost invisible because it happens so continuously. The brain is constantly deciding what deserves attention. At every moment, your senses gather an astonishing amount of information. The gentle pressure of clothing against your skin, the subtle movement of air across your face, distant sounds blending into the background, the changing brightness of the room, the countless tiny details that fill every scene before your eyes. If every sensation demanded equal attention, daily life would become overwhelming. Instead, the brain quietly filters. It selects. It allows certain experiences to move gently into awareness, while others remain softly in the background. This process is closely connected with memory. Experiences that match important goals or meaningful patterns are often more likely to be remembered later. Those that carry little relevance may quietly fade. This is not carelessness. It is wisdom shaped by millions of years of evolution. Imagine standing beside a peaceful stream flowing through a wide meadow. Leaves drift upon the current. Some continue downstream. Others settle gently against smooth stones along the bank. The stream does not choose with intention. Its currents naturally guide each leaf according to the shape of the water. Attention behaves in a somewhat similar way. The mind gently guides certain experiences toward lasting memory, while allowing many others to continue peacefully onward. Nothing is wasted. Even experiences that are not consciously remembered may briefly influence perception, learning, or behavior before quietly dissolving. Far beneath awareness, the brain is always learning. Long before sunrise reaches distant mountains, migratory birds begin to stir. Without consulting maps or instruments, many species prepare for journeys spanning thousands of kilometers. Young birds often inherit remarkable navigational tendencies, while experienced adults refine those instincts through repeated travel. Scientists continue investigating exactly how these abilities develop. Current evidence suggests that memory, inherited biological mechanisms, celestial cues, landmarks, and Earth's magnetic field all contribute in different ways depending upon the species. Watching these quiet migrations reminds us that remembering can take many forms. Some memories are deeply personal. Others belong to entire species. The route of a migrating crane, the flowering season remembered by bees, the return of sea turtles to familiar nesting beaches decades after they first entered the ocean. Life itself carries gentle patterns forward across generations. Human memory is one expression of a much older story. Elsewhere, beneath the surface of the sea, coral polyps slowly build reefs over centuries. Each tiny animal contributes only a minute structure. One by one, layer upon delicate layer, they create immense underwater landscapes visible even from space. No individual polyp understands the reef, yet together they patiently build something extraordinary. Individual memories often resemble these tiny contributions. A quiet breakfast shared with family, the first snowfall of winter, the smell of old books inside a peaceful library, a slow train passing through green countryside, an evening spent watching stars appear one by one. Each moment seems small while it unfolds. Together, they become the architecture of a lifetime. The larger pattern emerges only through accumulation. Researchers who study long-term memory often describe consolidation as a gradual process rather than a single event. Experiences formed during the day continue changing afterward. Sleep appears to play an important role. Repetition strengthens certain pathways. Meaning helps integrate new information with existing knowledge. Over time, memories become woven into broader networks of understanding. The process resembles weaving far more than storing. Imagine an old loom standing quietly inside a mountain cottage. Morning light filters through small windows onto wooden beams polished smooth by generations of careful hands. One thread alone appears almost insignificant. Another crosses it, then another. Hour after hour, patient work continues. Only much later does the full pattern become visible. Memory follows much the same rhythm. Individual experiences are the threads. Reflection becomes the weaving. Time quietly reveals the design. Meanwhile, another peaceful observation emerges from decades of neuroscience. Remembering is rarely perfect. At first, this may sound disappointing. Yet, imperfections often allow memory to remain wonderfully flexible. When recalling an experience, the brain emphasizes meaning rather than preserving every tiny detail with mechanical precision. Current evidence suggests that each act of remembering may briefly place a memory into a more flexible state before it is stored again, a process known as reconsolidation. Scientists continue investigating exactly how this process unfolds and under what circumstances memories become more or less susceptible to change. This ongoing research carries profound implications, especially for understanding learning, emotional healing, and the treatment of certain psychological conditions. Yet, even without exploring those clinical applications, the idea itself feels quietly beautiful. Memory is alive. Each recollection is not simply a visit to the past. It is also part of the present. Imagine returning each autumn to the same woodland path. The trail remains familiar, yet fallen leaves cover different stones. Young saplings have grown taller. Moss spreads gently across old logs. The stream beside the trail shifts its course by only a few centimeters. The place remains itself, and yet it is never exactly the same. Our memories often resemble these living landscapes. Their deepest character endures. Small details quietly evolve. This does not necessarily diminish truth. Rather, it reflects the nature of living systems. Life is always gently moving. Even stillness contains change. As midnight slowly gives way to the quieter hours before dawn, the world itself seems to participate in this gentle rhythm. The stars continue their silent procession across the heavens. Tides rise and fall along distant coastlines. Frost gathers delicately upon quiet fields. Somewhere, snow settles almost soundlessly onto the branches of ancient pines. Within the resting brain, memories also continue their patient journey. Some grow stronger, Some become lighter. Some quietly connect with experiences gathered long ago. Nothing forces these changes. Nothing rushes them. Like rivers finding their way toward the sea, they unfold according to rhythms that have been refined across millions of years of evolution. And perhaps there is comfort in knowing that the mind does not ask us to carry every moment with equal weight. Instead, it gently shapes experience into something softer, quieter, and more enduring, a landscape where countless ordinary days, woven together with patience, become the peaceful story of a human life.